For great Pokemon TCG product and prices, check out ccgcastle.com.
Hello, Pokemon fans! I'm Professor K for the Pokemon Evolutionaries, and today we are back with another Deck Tech Thursday. This week we're going to be profiling a deck that's shown some serious promise, hits really hard, and has a lot of really good matchups, and that deck is Xerneas BREAK Giratina EX. Now, this is a deck that requires a lot of energy to get going, but it's not so hard to do. So we're going to go over the strategy of how the deck works, how you should be playing it, and what cards are included, at least in a skeleton list that you might use. Of course, these are just our ideas. You guys can pick and choose which cards you want to take out and substitute with, and maybe you have ideas of your own to incorporate, but this is a series that's designed to help you get started. Now, this deck is standard format because our regionals is coming up on October 15th, and it is a standard format regional. So most of our decks have been standard. I know we haven't gotten any expanded decks recently, but it's not really expanded season just yet where we are at. So we're focusing on standard decks. So we're going to continue that same trend here, at least until that changes. So let's go ahead and jump right in here to the deck. It's a very straightforward deck. There's not a whole lot of surprises in it. It's a pretty consistent line of cards, but there is some room to do some tricks here and there. So let's go ahead and get things started here. Our main Pokemon we want to focus around is Xerneas, and its break form. But we're going to start off here with Xerneas. This is from XY base, but it's also in Steam Siege. So that's why I'm using the XY base one, because I have 4 of these readily on hand, but you can also use the Steam Siege ones because they're the same attacks. So the only attack you should really ever be using with this 130 HP Fairy type Pokemon is Geomancy. Choose 2 of your benched Pokemon. For each of those Pokemon, search your deck for a Fairy Energy card and attach it to that Pokemon. Shuffle your deck afterwards. So it's really no surprise that you're running 4 copies of this card. This is your main attacker, at least it's pre-evolution form, but it's what's going to set you up with lots of energy to utilize Xerneas BREAK's attack. So you want to just start off with this Pokemon, attach an energy, Geomancy, and just move on from there. And even if this one doesn't survive, we have ways to get it back later on. But 130 HP is really, really hard to knock out, especially that early in the game. So this will be followed up with... Oh, upside down. My camera's backwards, so I'm working backwards. We got Xerneas BREAK right here. It gives it an extra 20 HP, bringing it up to 150. And Lifestream is the attack we are focusing on more than anything. For 2 Fairy Energy, does 20 damage times the amount of energy attached to all of your Pokemon. So it doesn't matter what type of energy you're attaching to your Pokemon. You're doing 20 damage for each one, which means double colorless are worth 40. Double Dragon Energy, worth 40. It doesn't matter. So it doesn't have to be Fairy Energy, and we do play 3 of these in this deck. So it's a 4-3 line of Xerneas BREAK, and this is your main attacker for the deck. You can hit pretty hard, pretty fast with the combination of Geomancy and some of the other things that are here in this deck that accelerate energy pretty effectively as well. So our secondary Pokemon here is going to be Giratina EX, 2 copies of that. There's a lot of Mega Evolution in the current standard format, so Renegade Pulse is a very good ability. Prevent all effects of attacks, including damage done to this Pokemon by your opponent's Mega Evolution Pokemon. That is huge in this format when you've got things running around like Mega Mewtwo, for instance. Mega Rayquaza is another one. There's quite a few others as well. And the attack Chaos Wheel, hey, it's pretty darn solid in its own right. For a Grass, a Psychic, and 2 double colorless, does 2 colorless energy, 100 damage. Your opponent cannot play any Pokemon Tools, Special Energy, or Stadium cards from his or her hand during his or her next turn. So for a double Dragon, because this is a Dragon type, and 2 Fairy Energy, you're doing a pretty darn good attack. I mean, you're shutting out your opponent from playing Tools, Special Energy, and Stadium cards. That's pretty solid. And you're also walling out Megas with this thing. I don't think you can ask for too much more out of a Pokemon. These 2 go hand in hand together just as good as Darkrai and Giratina. And in my opinion, Xerneas is slightly better. I think there's more energy acceleration there. It's a 1 prize attacker as well. It's good. It's good, guys. Like, I'll be honest with you. I took this to a league challenge and I got 3rd place with it. And the only reason I got 3rd place is because I dead drew like crazy in one of my games and I couldn't do anything really. So this is solid in its own right. Next up, I know, guys, this is a competitive deck. We're a competitive focused channel with our decks, so I have to say it. 2 copies of Shaymin EX. I know this is easily a $70 to $90 card, but it's pretty darn imperative for the setup ability, being able to draw up to 6 cards in your hand, and without playing a supporter, it's only 1 Pokemon instead of running a 2-line, you know, a 1-1 line, a 2-2 line, whatever of Octillery. It just doesn't work. It takes up too much space. This takes up minimal space and does the job, even if it is only 1 time. That's really all you need to get your hand going. If you open up with an Ultra Ball, you got yourself a Shaymin easily. I'm sorry about the Skype notifications if you can hear them, but I forgot to turn down the volume of my computer. So I'm going to blame our executive producer, KKrust, for that, because I'm sure that's the one that's messaging right now, as well as a couple group of my friends, such as AlmightyMandals and a couple other people as well, like Mateo. And Matt Forio, sorry, I said Mateo. The last Pokemon in the deck is this Klefki right here, and this is from Steam Siege. You're playing it for one reason and one reason only, Wonderlock. Now, this is a very long-winded ability. Once during your turn before you attack, if this Pokemon is on your bench, you may discard all cards attached to that Pokemon and attach it to one of your Pokemon as a Pokemon tool card. Prevent any damage done to this Pokemon from attacks from your opponent's Mega Evolution Pokemon. If this card is attached to a Pokemon, discard this card at the end of your opponent's turn. So Wonderlock, you're going to be able to attach either to a Xerneas Xerneas BREAK, or a Giratina. That's the only 3 you're ever going to attach them to. Giratina is the only one I could see that being an issue, is if they've got Garbodor in play or something like that. Well, even then, Wonderlock is stopped, so I guess there's no reason for that either. I don't think let me just take that back for a second. Brain fart. You would never want to attach Klefki to Giratina. You're only going to attach this thing to Xerneas BREAK to save it versus your Mega Evolution lineup, and that way you can hit harder. Most of the time, it's going to be close to a knockout or a knockout when you're going to want to attach Klefki and discard it. Personally, the deck I run did not use Klefki, but I think Klefki is a more useful Pokemon than the one I had in there previously, which was Hydreigon EX. Matter of fact, I've got it sitting right here. This is the one that was in my deck for its attack Shred, going through any effects on your opponent's active Pokemon. It allows you for another double dragon target. And if your Fairy Garden is knocked away and your opponent replaces your Stadium card, if they Lysander up a Giratina, it can get out of the active spot for 1 energy instead of 2 because of that 2 colorless energy less. But you have to have a Stadium card in play for that ability to work. So, I don't know. I didn't think it was useful enough. It was great as a double dragon target after I had enough on Giratina, but I never used Shred and I never used Dragon Road, so I just took it out. It's 2 prizes. It's got a bulky retreat cost. If the ability doesn't work and I have no Stadium, there's really no point to it. So Klefki, I think, is the better option in this format. So that's going to do it for all of the Pokemon. Next, we're going to move on to the supporter lineup. And in my opinion, the supporter lineup here is about as basic as it's going to get. It's so simple. We've got 3 copies of Professor Sycamore. Discard your hand and draw 7 cards. Best draw supporter in the game. I've said it, I don't know how many times. I'm going to keep saying it until the cows come home, because it is absolutely the best draw supporter in the game by far. But it's not too far behind from this one right here. This is not too far behind from Sycamore. 4 copies of N. Each player shuffles his or her hand into his or her deck. The remaining, each player draws a card for each of his or her remaining prize cards. 4 copies of N, because this is not a deck that you really want to throw away a lot of your resources. You're going to want to conserve a lot of them. And most of the time, you're going to want to be disrupting your opponent if they happen to be ahead in prizes, because you can set up pretty fast with this deck. It's pretty straightforward. Attack with Lifestream over and over and over. And when you're up against the wall, you use Chaos Wheel, or you use Chaos Wheel against decks that, say like Mega Evolution Pokemon. You can just rely on Chaos Wheel, attach a Fighting Fury Belt to that thing, hit for 220, knock out most Megas, like Mega Scizor, for instance, which was one of my opponents that I took down because of Giratina EX, 2-shotting it with a Chaos Wheel with Fighting Fury Belt. So, like I said, if you're ending yourself down to a few cards, it's really not that serious if you really look at it, especially when you're talking about late game after you've already set up. So, the last 2, yes, the last 2 supporters in the deck, 2 copies of Lysander. Switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with his or her active Pokemon. This is where you're going to get your big knockouts when you start getting a lot of energy on yourself here, and you can just start taking knockouts off the bench. Once you're ready, you can take a 2 prize like Shaymin. 2 of them increases your chance of doing so. So that's it for supporters. Let's move on to the item cards, which is also very straightforward and simple. 4 copies of VS Seeker. Put a supporter card from your discard pile into your hand. I don't know a single deck that runs less than 4 VS Seeker anymore. It's too good, it's too important, and I don't see anybody ever not run that anymore. Next up, we got 4 copies of Ultra Ball. Discard 2 cards from your hand. Search your deck for a Pokemon, reveal it and put it into your hand. Shuffle your deck afterward. Any deck that uses Shaman, you've got to use Ultra Ball. Water decks, they use Dive Ball for the most part because not many water decks run Shaman. They run Octillery or nothing at all. So in this particular instance, 4 copies of Ultra Ball is the way to go to get all the Pokemon that you need, especially Shaman early on. We also have 4 copies of Trainer's Mail, yet another super important card. I don't see anybody running any less than 3 of these anymore. Look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You may reveal a trainer card you find there, except for Trainer's Mail. Put it into your hand, shuffle the other cards back into your deck. Very good card when you're wanting to get yourself into a supporter or an item card that you really need. Most of the time, it's successful in some sense. May not be exactly what you're looking for all the time, but sometimes it is. Sometimes all you needed was just to draw into that Trainer's Mail so you can get the one you're really looking for. Your other energy acceleration in this deck is going to be 4 copies of Max Elixir. You have a couple of targets that this can be used for. You're going to look at the top 6 cards of your deck and attach a basic energy card you find there to a basic Pokemon on your bench. Shuffle the other cards back into your deck. So basically what you're going to want to do here, pun intended there with the basically, is you're going to want to attach to bench Xerneas and Giratina. Sometimes you have to attach to Shaman. You can't really do much about it, but you can't attach to something that's already evolved like Xerneas Break. So you're going to want to keep some unevolved Xerneas sitting on your bench. You don't want to just constantly evolve into Xerneas Break as fast as possible because you want to have some Max Elixir targets. Giratina is a good one, and Xerneas is as well, but Shaman sometimes just has to be the one to sit there and hold the energy for as long as possible. But we play something that makes that maybe not quite so painful. We'll get to that here in a moment. We have 2 copies of Fighting Fury Belt. This is designed for 1 Pokemon and 1 Pokemon only. Giratina EX. The basic Pokemon this card is attached to gets an extra 40 HP, and its attacks do 10 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So Fighting Fury Belt makes Giratina into a 210 HP monster, and Chaos Wheel will do 110 damage instead of 100, so that's really solid. Sometimes it helps to attach one of these to a Shaman EX to give it 150 HP so it doesn't get one-shotted by many things. A lot of things can't deal 150 damage in this format, so sometimes you gotta protect your Shaman, attach a Fighting Fury Belt onto it just to save yourself from losing the game when your opponent's down to 2 prizes. The other tool card we run in this deck, this is what I was talking about, EXP Share. When your active Pokemon is knocked out by damage from your opponent's attack, you may move 1 basic energy card that was attached to that Pokemon to the Pokemon this card is attached to. So you can attach this to something like a Xerneas or even a Xerneas Break because it doesn't matter. You could attach it to a Giratina if you really wanted to. You could attach it to a Shaman to save some energy if you absolutely have to. You know you're going to have a Xerneas knocked out. But it's a very good tool card, very useful for conserving energy in a deck that relies on energy. Next up, we have a single copy of Special Charge. Shuffle 2 special energy cards from your discard pile back into your deck. This card is your lifesaver versus things like Crushing Hammer, Enhanced Hammer, where they love to discard your special energy, especially Double Dragon energy, or a card like Mega Scizor that Iron Crusher just absolutely destroys, discarding special energy every time they attack. This is your way of getting it back. It essentially gives you 6 Double Dragon energy in the deck while only running 4. Super important to not throw that card out at all costs, especially if you know you're going to be losing energy throughout a match. Next up, we have a single copy of Super Rod. Shuffle 3 and any combination of Pokemon and basic energy cards from your discard pile into your deck. Another way to conserve your energy, another way to get back your Xerneas Break, and if you need to, any of the following 3 here, Giratina, Shaman, or Klefki. You can recycle Klefki that way, which is pretty nifty if you're trying to play some shenanigans against your opponent that's got Mega Evolution Pokemon. But it's very important to get back those basic energy more than anything else and your Xerneas and Xerneas Break. Alright, that's it for item cards. For our stadiums, we've got 3 copies of Fairy Garden. Each Pokemon that has any Fairy energy attached to it, both yours and your opponent's, I should say, has no retreat cost. So, they Lysander up a Giratina. you're like, oh shoot, I'm stuck. Well, good thing I play Fairy Garden. Put the Fairy Garden into play. It's got a Fairy Energy attached to it as long as it has something attached to it, because Double Dragon counts as a Rainbow Energy. As long as it's attached to a Dragon Pokemon, it can be used for any type of energy. So you can retreat Giratina, no problem. Lysander up a Shaman, they can't knock it out. Hey, no problem, we can retreat. I've got a Xerneas BREAK that's about to get knocked out, and you're afraid of giving up that one prize that could turn the game against you. There you go, retreat it, perfect. Free retreat cost, very good indeed. Super important. So, that's it for the stadiums. I'm gonna move these down so I can fit everything here. And now down to the energy count. As I mentioned before, there is 4 copies of Double Dragon Energy for Giratina. 1, 2, 1, 2. Oh wait, you can't see up that high. Sorry about that. 2 to this one, 2 to this one, and all of a sudden, Xerneas BREAK, as long as you have the necessary energy, you've got 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120, 140, 160, 180, 200 damage if you have all 4 of your Double Dragon out in play. That is just, wow. That's something else right there, as long as you have those 2 attached there. So essentially for 6 energy cards, you're hitting for 200 damage. That's just sick. It's absolutely sick. So we'll put that there. And as far as our Fairy Energy count goes, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. 10 Fairy Energy as I knock away my Super Rod and Stadium cards. 10 Fairy Energy to use to our advantage. So at absolute maximum, you're able to attack for 20, 40, 60, 81, 20, 40, 60, 82, 240, 280, 320, 360 damage with every single energy card in play. That is absolutely nuts. And I don't think you should ever be attacking for that much damage. If you do, congratulations, you broke the game. No one should have that much energy at one time unless your opponent just is drawing absolutely nothing and you've just hit the jackpot on max elixirs and turns, I guess. I don't know. But anyways, guys, that's the deck. Xerneas BREAK, Giratina, very powerful combination. Look for it at your regionals. If you are playing in a standard regionals, it's going to be there, I'm sure. It's too good to not at least show up in some numbers. So maybe you want to play the deck for yourself. Take this list, do with it what you will. I personally like this list the way it is. I don't think I would actually change anything about this list. It's just, it's too good the way it is for me anyway. You might have your different preferences though, so take the deck, do with it what you will. This is just a guide to show you guys what you could play here for a competitive tournament, and I just do my best to provide you with the information. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to hit that like button, comment down below, and of course subscribe for more Pokemon TCG content here on the Pokemon Evolutionaries, and we hope to see you guys in the next video. So until then, I'm Professor K for the Pokemon Evolutionaries, and be sure to look out for this deck versus whatever ends decides to build next Friday. Not tomorrow, next Friday. So until then, you all take care. Have a great day.